create your bias binding, you need to cut your fabric on the bias, okay? And the bias is the diagonal. So I'm just going to explain to you quickly why you would do that. This is the selvage, so this is the side edge of your fabric, and at the moment I've got my fabric folded so that it is right sides together, and I've met the selvage to selvage. Out of shot over there is the fold of the fabric, okay? So that's my width, selvage to selvage. These are my sides. I've got cut edges here, and that is the length, to the beginning of the length of the fabric, and then it'll go off to the end of the roll would be the other length of the fabric, or to wherever the cut edge is at the other end, okay? So that is my length. That is also the warp of my fabric. And then this is my width, and that is the weft of my fabric. And to remember that, the weft goes from weft to white. That's the only way that I can remember which one's which. The warp is the strongest. So if you pull on the warp, it is taut. The weft is similarly as strong, if not as strong. Nice and tight. If, however, with the bias, because you've got the two fibres of the fabric are going like that, the diagonal is going to be the weakest point. So if you pull on the diagonal, it's very stretchy. You see that spring? Okay, and that's why we do bias cut dresses, because it shapes the body much more easily because you've got that stretch. And the reason we make bias binding on the bias is usually because bias binding is used to go around curves and shapes and things. So this is why we cut it on the bias. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to cut the bias binding. The first way of doing it is by using Pattern Master, because it's got 45 degrees marked on it, so you can see where your diagonal is. You might find that other rulers also for cutting and things could possibly have that. So it's one of the quickest and easiest ways. You line up the 45-degree line with the selvage edge or with the stripe on your fabric, as I'm doing here. And then you know that that is 90 degrees, and that will give you the diagonal, okay? And you can mark it on. My preference is to mark it on in chalk. I'm just using a chalk pencil here just so that you can hopefully see the line. Just also something I haven't mentioned, that's my right side, that's my right side, and I'm just marking it on the wrong side. You always mark on the wrong side of your fabric, okay? So that is a 45-degree line. That means that that line, if I pull along that line, it is on the true bias, okay? And then you work out how wide you want it to be, and I want it to be 2.5 centimeters wide. So I'm just lining up again using my Pattern Master. I'm using the lines going across, and I'm just going to mark that off at 2.5 centimeters. The reason I'm using this ticking fabric is so that you can see the right side and the wrong side, and also see that it is on the bias. Okay, that's how I would mark off how to draw out your bias binding, and then obviously you can cut that through.